Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 205 of the new series of the Cognitive Podcast. And I'm recording this here at 4:34 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, October 20th, 2024. By the time you hear this, it should be October 26th, I will be probably finished running the latest race, but you're going to hear a lot about that this week, about various runnings, because we had a very happy week along that light. It's been a great week. Your comments are very welcome. You can comment in the blog show notes at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can comment over on our group on Ravelry. There is a link in the show notes to the group. Of course, if you're commenting in the group already there. Yeah, it's kind of circular, isn't it? In the warm thanks department, Steffi Joe, right after I recorded the last episode, I read your post, which sounds like this. Although the lovelies at the Greater Los Angeles Spinning Guild have given me fabulous going away gifts, the little bag, that is the 10 square bag, was made by my home crafting group, the Irvine Craft Nidgets, or IC. They got together and designed and made the bags for the two of us that are relocating. Okay, I will stop saying that now that I'm not talking about the bag anyway right now. But no, seriously, thank you, Steffi Joe. My apologies. I don't know why I thought it was the LA Guild that had made it. Last episode and the episode before, I was getting a few things wrong, so thank you for your patience. I do not edit nearly as carefully as I once did. I have to admit this. Thanks also go out to our own Amy S. for her lovely, lovely thank you letter for CFRX, especially that picture of that beautiful young lady enjoying Boom the Beaver. And it made me really happy because I took a bag of the Woobles, as I said, and I handed them to a bunch of kids and said, just make sure I get the bag back. And so I got like 20 Woobles adopted. It's a great way to use the Woobs. It made me very, very happy. And it was nice to see Boom being enjoyed by somebody else. Also, I wanted to thank Amy because she was saying, why don't you take all these mini Woobles you're making and string them together? And I put a link in the show notes because I think it's in the show notes to 2003. She puts a beautiful picture of a heart garland that she has made with, I don't know if they were knitted or crocheted hearts. I looked at it really quickly a minute ago. But anyway, they're very beautiful. And she strings them to a garland. And I thought that is a really cute idea to just make all the little minis like the witch's hat and the broom and the candy corn and the pumpkins or any or all of the above and string them together. And I liked her picture of the heart garland, so you can see that in the show notes. But there was a popular thing in the Woobles group. Somebody went on to the Michaels website for Michaels Craft Store. And there was a shadow box, but it was black and shaped like a house. And they were putting their Halloween Woobles into it. And it was really, really a cute way to display them. I did not bite that particular bullet because I have excess. Right now I don't want to add to my collections any more than I have to. But it was a lovely idea. Thank you, Amy, and thank you so much for that beautiful picture as well. Which reminds me to say, Cognitive Fiber Retreat 11 is scheduled for October 11th, 2025, so mark your calendars. That means that we will start the sign-ups in August, and probably we will just start them for everybody in August. I doubt I'm going to distinguish between previous attendees because I don't think we have a group that I'm worried about overflow. So I will probably just let people start signing up in August so that I know that we have enough numbers to make the room and all that. So, Gemma, you are wondering, what's on your hooks and needles? Well, I finished the Franken socks, which makes me happy. In fact, I'm wearing them as I record this. They came out very delightfully. I know this is weird. I wanted to just put colors together that I would never think of as going together. And in my head, I was telling myself, make the ugliest striped socks you can. And instead, look, they came out adorable. I really, really like them. And they are off the needles and finished, which is nice because that gives me a needle to use to start working on the sock tube from Steffi Joe, which I talked about a lot last episode, so I will not repeat. Also finished the Dragonflies full circle skirt. This is Classic Simplicity number 8863. It's very, very hard to get a full circle skirt pattern now from the big companies that once were like Simplicity or Vogue. You can get them from some of the private designers that are selling patterns online for you to download and print. And I really like this pattern. This is as easy as it gets. This has no pockets in its original form, and it's 4 pieces. It's 2 pieces for the waistband and 2 pieces of the skirt. This could not get easier. Of course, I did cut out a pocket for it because in my skirts, I like to put a right-hand pocket in the skirt. It's just so easy to do. I have a pocket from one of my other patterns that I just simply add in. So there it is. That's the Dragonflies pattern. I was looking at my cutout skirts and rethinking the one with the black cats and the one with the unicorns on it. And we shall see. I may recut them to a different skirt pattern. I'm still considering it. But I thought I should go ahead and get going on the brown full circle skirt that is in a doe suede or a micro suede or a faux suede, whatever you want to call it. And also this one. These two just go beautifully into the pattern 8863. This particular pattern was printed in 1996, but I know I had a version of it I bought earlier than that, probably about 1991, because I was making these when I was a college professor up in Washington State. If you live in a cold weather climate, I highly recommend full circle skirts, and I highly recommend you make them in flannel. And then there's the scary thing. If you go to Joann's Fabrics, they have sales where they're selling this stuff for $2.50 a yard. So that's what I'm wearing. It was $2.50 a yard, and I bought 5 yards of it. So, you know, that's my $12.50 skirt I'm wearing right there. And it's beautiful. I'm wearing it even as I record this, and it is simply lovely. The great thing about these, I always say it takes me 1 day to cut them out and 1 day to assemble them. If you actually are a fast seamstress, like, you know, Gigi Knitmore could probably whip this out in half an hour, but I take time to cut things. It's not a hard cut at all. The hardest part of it is folding the fabric the right way so that the pieces are laid out properly. You do have to pay attention because you have to do some funky folding there. And even adding the pocket doesn't make it take that long. I basically started it at about 10:30 this morning, and I think I was finished by about 1:30. And in that time, I also did some of the pinning and simple seaming on the brown faux suede skirt as well, which will be the next thing I do. But I didn't want to get out of this weekend without doing one of the skirts, without getting one skirt off the chair of potential skirts. And it's so nice. It's just so nice to have another one made and to have the space back where I was storing those piles of fabric. It's just delightful. You can also see a picture in the show notes, not only of me wearing it, but of Minerva blessing it. And I have to tell you, this is an old quilting tradition invented by yours truly. Back in the 80s when I was at Stanford, I learned how to quilt, and then I taught a group of my undergrads how to quilt while I was teaching a regular class as a teaching assistant. And one of the things we dealt with was my cats were always lying on our fabrics while we were working on the quilts. And so we realized we couldn't beat this, and so one of us, I don't remember which, said, well, the cat's actually blessing the fabric. So this became a thing, that when you're working on a project and a cat lies on it, any animal really, it's being blessed. So there is a picture of Minerva, and she is blessing my beautiful Dragonflies skirt. She is lying there purring her brains out in that picture. I took it just a few minutes ago because I was sitting here in my skirts. Minerva is thrilled that I'm wearing flannel skirts again, let me tell you. She loves to lie in them in my lap and just cuddle. Meanwhile, amongst the Halloween woobles, I worked on the little pumpkin costume that is one of the Halloween wooble mini kits from 2023. And you make this little costume and you put it on the penguin wooble. You could probably put it on a lot of the basic egg-shaped woobles, but this one was designed with Pierre the penguin in mind. So you can see Pierre in his little costume. This thing is surprisingly complicated. Having said that, it's not hard. It's just time-consuming. It's all back loop only to get the ridges. And it was very pleasant. A lot of people talked about how it came out a little tight to try to get the penguin into it. So most of the kits, all of the kits in fact, as far as I know, use a G hook, which is I think a 4.0. And I used an I hook on it, which I believe is a 5.5 millimeter, and it went really well. And if you're going to make this thing seriously, use an H, which is a 5.0, or an I. Don't use a G. You'll only regret it, really. It just was so much easier to work with in the bigger hook. In progress, the stash toss, let's see, is at 42 in versus 53 out. I also adopted the super bulkies. I was going to give them away and then said why. And so you can see I've been flirting with making another rug and realized in that first experiment that you see on the photo in the show notes, I really don't quite have enough. I have about 220 yards. And in a super bulky, that didn't seem like enough to get what I wanted. I was experimenting using I think a K hook, and that's also way too small. So I have since added a Q hook, and Q, I'd have to look up what that actually is in millimeters. It's big. It's like, knitting with a broomstick. It's big, but it's the biggest hook I could get, frankly. I got myself a Q hook, and I'm going to actually hold an acrylic yarn up against that yarn and go for more than one skein. The reason I'm doing that is more than one strand when I crochet. The reason I'm doing that is the best of the rugs I have made was done that way. And it was a very strange brew of an acrylic and camouflage, which I hate. I just hate the camouflage colorway. This is the green military camouflage. And then this roving that a former boss gave me that she didn't know what to do with. She had just been given it and couldn't figure out what to do with it. She thought it was buffalo. I'm pretty sure it's just wool and somebody flim-flammed her. But at any rate, I crocheted those together and considered it a blanket and had it sitting on the back of my command chair for years, and then realized it really should be a rug. And it turns out it's a really good rug, that the acrylic looks good in that configuration, despite the hideous colorway. And what I did with that was I knitted it in a basket weave, and the acrylic keeps the wool from shrinking too far and distorting in shape, because every time I wash it, the acrylic doesn't go anywhere. And the wool has felted, but it can't really shrink because of the acrylic blended in with it. So I'm looking at this and thinking I'm probably going to do the same thing. I'm thinking of a double strand of acrylic yarn, picking up the colors in that multicolored wool, and just doing a big square rug with it. But I don't want to knit it. I really think I'm just going to crochet it with that Q hook. Meanwhile, I still have the sock tube from Steffi Jo on my desk. Haven't done anything with it yet. It is waiting for me to get another needle out of my socks, which leads me to say, you can see a picture of Yule sock number 1 in the colorway Dashing Through the Snow. And this was from one of our sponsors. For CFRX, I bought the colorway because I liked it so much. And you can see it there. I am just past the waist yarn for the heel. The 10 square bag, I'm just working my way up the side, and it's very boring. I'm doing single crochet row after row, and I'm enjoying it. It's very dense in this DK weight on a G hook, a 4.0 hook. So I'm working on the 10 square bag, and I'm working on the Yule sock, and there is a picture of the Yule sock there, looking a bit bruised, as it does. And then there's the Fairy God Ferret, where I haven't done anything in the Fairy God Ferret, but it's sitting there looking very patient on my desk. I really enjoy it. I feel like it's kind of my desk companion. I also have not touched the Lakeside Cardigan or Vestiary 24, which is a shame because I'm really close to finished on that. I should really just sit down and crank through it. I'm waiting for the weather to cool down enough. Dizzy Blondes, no spinning, so I'm just going to go on to a strategy. The strategy is really about craft psychology. This strategy led me to look up the link for the book called Craft Psychology by Dr. Anne, I'm going to say it wrong, Kirketerp. And it's originally published in Danish and has been translated into English. Amazon doesn't have it. You have to get it from DMC. That is the company that makes the embroidery flosses. There is a link in the show notes for you to do that. I was very intrigued by this. I came across it on the internet, and I put a photo in the show notes, but I'm going to read it to you in case you can't read it from the photo. It says, did you know having multiple craft projects in progress is better for your well-being? Dr. Anne Kirketerp claims that having a range of projects to choose from gives you freedom to select one that matches your energy level, and that promotes a better flow state. Now, I went and looked up the book because I got very interested in this because Americans never talk about this. This is very frustrating to me that as a psychologist, we have art therapists, but they tend to have people just drawing pretty pictures to express themselves. We don't really dig deeply, in my experience, into all that craft has to offer people in terms of psychological well-being. Yet, there's a very prevalent story in the medical community of people whose spouses die or children die suddenly, and they begin to knit frantically. And I've seen anecdote after anecdote about women doing this in their doctor's offices, and the doctor saying, let them do it, let them do it. Now, what's going on there, of course, I hate to even think about, it's a horrible thing, but when you do repetitive motions like that, simple repetitive motions with both hands, of course we know from the wonderful work of my colleague, Dr. Francine Shapiro, this calms the amygdala, that is the brain's smoke alarm, its early warning system for crisis. And when someone is in crisis, their amygdala simply won't calm. And when you do repetitive stereotypical motion, like using both hands repetitively that way, and that can be knitting. We have the research on knitting. We know it's true of knitting. But we also know it works in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, I think it is. And that's Dr. Shapiro's protocol, where you're sort of waving your finger in front of the person's eyes or tapping them on the knees. I'm fluent in this, but I try not to use it in practice for a number of reasons. I don't have the setup for it. But EMDR is the way psychologists do this to their patients. But you can do this yourself by things like playing the piano, conducting an orchestra, knitting, probably crocheting. We haven't got the research, but it seems highly likely. Probably embroidery, because if you think about what you're doing, with one hand you're moving the hoop back and forth a little bit as you go and adjusting it. There's probably all sorts of things. We suspect playing piano, playing guitar, any instrument where you're using both hands. There's the possibility that when you go running, you're doing it. If you're jogging, if you're moving your legs and arms rhythmically like that, it's a high chance that that's doing the same thing. So we know that crafting is good for us. Now, the interesting thing where she says this promotes a flow state. Yes, crafting in general promotes a flow state. And the important thing is to make it easy and available for yourself to relax into the flow state. So, you know, when I'm saying I'm going to sew these skirts, for example, well, first I have to cut them out. That's not really going to get me into a flow state. So I sort of did that slowly over last weekend. But working on them where I'm focused on them and just pinning, and I'm focused to the exclusion of all else, notice that is also the definition of self-hypnosis, of meditation. So these things, and flow state, yes, flow state. So these things are going to get you into a flow state. Now, having a number of projects, I think what the good doctor is probably suggesting here, because this is just somebody else doing a factoid based on reading her book, but my idea is that she's suggesting you need a go-to. When in crisis, you have a go-to. You have something you know you can pick up and just work on without too much intensive thought. So as I sit here, I have a go-to next to me, which is the Yule sock that is sitting next to me. And that's what I use sock knitting for, that it's always the same thing. It's just the same pattern over and over. I don't do anything fancy for that because I want to have it on hand and just be able to start doing it, and it's very relaxing and meditative for me. Having a number of projects, of course, is going to guarantee you'll have something in the right place to do that. I say this because there's kind of a long-running thing, I don't even know what to call it, in the knitting podcaster world about should you just work on one project or should you have many projects. I usually fall in the middle. I tended for years to limit myself to 4 projects because there is another side to that, and that is losing track of your projects and feeling frustrated and overwhelmed by your projects, which is going to take a lot of the pleasure out of the crafting for you. From what I can tell, many crafters, and I believe Jasmine Knitmore would consider herself part of this school, many crafters can just have like 200 projects going and they're good with it. I can't do that. That would make me crazy. I can have a limited number. I'm laughing because lately I really have had startitis and I've just let myself do it because I wanted to declutter, and decluttering means knitting through all this yarn I've got in my study, but it also meant getting rid of this big pile of fabric that was just dedicated to skirts and reorganizing things. And I've been doing that and I'm very, very happy about it. So what I want to say is Dr. Kirketerp has written about this. It says in the review of the book I read that she spent 7 years doing the research on this. I really have to get a copy of this. I really am curious to read this because I just think this is one of those topics that is so long overdue because we treat crafting these days as women's work. And not only are we gendered in the way we look at it, I also think we're very classist. We think of it as women who can't afford to be consumerist and go running around and buying new things all the time. So I think we tend to look down on it in our culture in a classist and gendered way. And so I think it's important that someone is saying, no, this actually has a lot of purpose for humans. I also am old enough to remember that when I was young, most men had a craft that they did. They did some kind of woodworking. They built birdhouses. They trained dogs, whatever. They had some skill. They built things in their workshop. They repaired cars back when you could do that in your own driveway. You didn't have to worry about computer chips and all that. And I think we've really lost that for men. And I think it really shows. I think men are just bored and frustrated. Go look on the internet. Maybe I'm reading too much into the things I see on the internet. But I think the only outlet for creativity recently has been seen publicly as just doing things on the internet, being an influencer, doing podcasts, whatever. And I think this is selling short the real health values of using our hands constructively to create things. And I have to say, it's wonderful to make podcasts. I don't mean to diss that, and I'm doing it right now, so obviously I approve of it. But this is just one fraction of what I do creatively. And I really value the ability to sit down in a long morning and whip out a skirt, and at the end of it, you have this thing you can use, and I'm using right now, in fact. And the same with the woobles. Every now and then, I need to just bash something out really quickly, and that's the advantage of the woobles. And there's plenty of places these things can all go to be useful to people. So that is Dr. Kirketerp's book, and hopefully I will get a copy of it and sit down and give it a good read and come back to it here. But it's called Craft Psychology. The link is in the show notes. Currently, to get the English translation, which is only recently out, you have to buy it from DMC, which is a fine place to be buying things from. Oh, shoot. Well, we had a great weekend here in the Running family. First off, I went out, and this isn't really in the show notes, but I'm going to say it. I decided that I wanted to sham the course for the Monster Dash next week. I was concerned that it goes out on a downhill and comes back on an uphill. So I decided I would go sham it. And I shammed it a little late in the day yesterday morning, but it worked out great. It was a good run, and it didn't get too hot, which is what I thought was going to happen. It turns out to be just a wonderful course, and I enjoyed it. There's one place under a bridge where you're sharing the road with bikers, and there's no lane for anything but bikes. And I think that's a little dangerous. I think they should put mirrors in or something, because the bikes come through there pretty fast, and it's amazing they don't hit runners or walkers. But apart from that, it's a very, very nice course, so I'm looking forward to that, and I will talk about that more in a minute. But in the meantime, I came back from that, and I went over to another park. I was running it out of West Creek Park in Valencia, and like a mile away, there's Central Park, and I went over there because my son was having his very last track meet of his track team career. He is a member of the Santa Clarita Storm Track Club for kids, and is really great. He's as old as you can be in it, and he ran his very last meet, and it was a really good meet. They had kids from all over the LA basin running this, and I was very proud of him because he came in 8th place overall in his age group with all this competition. And he did get a medal for it, and you can see a picture of him standing proudly holding his medal. You can also see his agony pics. When my kid runs, if he knows you're taking his picture, he mugs this tremendously agonized expression. It's worth it just to see it. I don't know if you can see it well enough in those pictures, but there's one of him. He's just run a hill in the first one, and he's coming around a level curve, and he's looking way too agonized. But I have to hand it to him because then he went out of sight, and when he came back, he was just running with sweat. He was so working hard. And then he had to go up another hill, and you can see a picture of him on that hill coming down it. What intimidates me is I believe this is the turkey trot course that he and I expect to run on Thanksgiving morning. So I'm intimidated. I don't know about you. A lot of hill on this, so I have to go sham it. And you can see he and his teammates standing on the victory towers there, and they're just all hanging out together and holding up a picture of their team certificate from the meet. And there's a picture of him and his wonderful coach, Mr. Jeremiah, who we owe a lot to. Jeremiah actually said to me, he said, I always wanted to meet you. I heard you run. And I said, oh yeah, I was out this morning, because I was standing there in my running togs wearing a race shirt from San Jose. And he said, we remember when your son was little. And I laughed, and he imitated him beautifully, because my son used to run like looking up and looking around, and Jeremiah used to scream, focus, you need to focus. And now my son is a very focused, very fast runner. And boy, he sure wasn't when he started. He kept getting the Spirit Award every year because he never gave up, but he never placed at all. And suddenly this year, he's fast. So we were very, very proud of him. So there's a picture of him and his favorite coach. Afterwards, we went to lunch to celebrate at Toppers, and we took the selfie of joy, which you can see. Actually, that's in a Starbucks, because after that, and this has to do with the upcoming, I said, let's celebrate even more. I'm going to run the Monster Dash next Saturday morning. It's got a costume event. Do you want to wear a costume and run it with me? So he said yes. So we went over to Spirit Halloween. Whew, don't take the really little kids in there. Some of that's a bit X-rated. But anyway, we went over to Spirit, and I picked up stuff for my costume. No surprise here. I have to be able to run in it comfortably, so I just figured something with ears and maybe a tail and a skirt. It was a toss-up between Scooby-Doo or a black cat. Can you even hesitate to guess which one I'm going as? If you're confused, there's a picture of me in my sparkly black cat ears, and a picture of him. He went as a character from a Netflix show that you may know, Squid Game, where you could put any number you wanted on the tracksuit, and he pick the number of the winner, of the guy who survives in the first season. I think it's a guy. So there's a picture of me in my sparkly ears and him in the top of his tracksuit. So that is upcoming next week, next Saturday morning. We have that at 7:30. So I'll have to roust him out early to get out of here by like 6:30 because we have a packet pickup first. After that, we have the 5K associated with the Santa Clarita Marathon on November 5th and the Turkey Trot Thanksgiving morning, if I can make those hills. And then there's a jingle jog in December, and I have races in February and March and June up for next year. I'll come back to those in the calendar. Okay, on to the fluffy books. I have not yet seen the new Verity Lark. A new Flavia Albia is out by Lindsay Davis, and I cannot remember the name of it. I am mired in the book, that is mired down in the book, A Fatal Legacy. You really have to remember the Marcus Didius Falco prequel to this to get it, but I'm enjoying it. It's a very, very clever, complicated plot, and I don't think Lindsay Davis can really write a bad novel, but this one is a little bit tangled. At night, I'm now listening to Georgette Heyer, The Talisman Ring. I have to tell you, this one is hysterically funny. If you know your Jane Austen, you know that Jane Austen was writing romances, but she writes this brilliant send-up of the type of lurid, crazy romances that were popular in her time, and that, of course, is Northanger Abbey. Well, this is Georgette Heyer doing her version of that, and it is very, very funny, and I was well into it before it hit me why all the characters have such ridiculous names, that their names, of course, are based on these out-of-control kinds of romances that were being written and read in the late 18th century and the early 19th century. And the whole book is a send-up of this, with two women at the center of it, a 28-year-old who's kind of the older maiden lady character, and then our heroine. It's a bit of a send-up of the craziness that women were buying into and wishing they could live in when they were reading those romances. The book is very funny, and there is a character who is the perpetual straight man, Sir Tristram Shields. And if that isn't the most knightly name, right? Now, she uses Tristram as opposed to Tristan, which is the more common version. And, of course, Tristan in the Arthurian cycle is the guy who's born to have misery. His name means born in sadness, in case you didn't notice, or your Latin is a little weak. And poor Sir Tristram is always the butt of every joke. He is the solution to every problem. Every time somebody needs somebody to be the fall guy, they use him. Is very, very witty, very, very funny. And I've been enjoying it. There are plot holes all over it, and you don't really notice them if you're not paying attention. Don't pay attention. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. This is the Talisman Ring. This is written in 1936, I believe. And it's set in 1793. This is what you get when you're using Wikipedia to look up your book before your podcast. I do recommend it. It is really quite fun. The thing about this is I don't know a lot about Heyer as an author. So I don't know when she's writing, how long she's writing. The latest book that I've read by her was 1944. The earliest is this one, 1936. But I have to say, this book is written with so much deftness, so much skill. She's so sure-handed managing this book and managing the characters. It really, really is just absolutely hilarious and fun and really well put together, even with the plot holes. Okay, on to something I really like. There is a crocheter named Nastasia, and she makes a lot of YouTube videos, and they're really quite good. And she pointed me towards this crochet hook case to make yourself, that is. And this is a pattern by a now deceased crocheter who made a lot of really handy, useful patterns, and this was one of her most popular. And this is just a case. You can do it two ways. You can put craft plastic in it and make it into a booklet, or you can just not have the craft plastic and make this a kind of roll-up case. But this is a hook case. I'm recommending it because the Woobles, among other things, started to issue merchandise with Woobles branding on it. And you know, I got the cap and I enjoyed it. I am enjoying it, in fact. It's my winter running hat now. But they made some good stuff, and then they made some really ridiculously overpriced stuff. And one of them was they made a hook case. And it's kind of embarrassing because all Woobles kits use a size 40mm G hook. And so in the ad, they've got this case, and it's got like 12 hooks in it, and they're all the basic blue hook. Because everybody needs 12 G hooks, right? But it made me realize that with crochet hooks, you really should be able to make your own case. And you should be able to bling it up and decorate it and color it any way you want to. So I went in search of that, and Nastasia came to my rescue. She's got a YouTube video on how to do this very case. And she did ask the woman who wrote the pattern for permission. She asked her for this in 2015, and the woman passed in 2021, she says. But she does refer you to the original pattern, which is available on an archive of old websites. And I've given you the link to it. This is web.archive.org. is the site. And it's there, and when you click on it, you just get the first page, and it looks like you're only getting one page, which fooled me for a while. And then I just started clicking around, and I believe you just click on the page itself, and it immediately will download a PDF for you. So I have given you a link to that page. And if you need a case for your hooks, I highly recommend this pattern. And I do not want you to have to go searching around the internet to find this. This is one of those things that every crocheter should have in their catalog. If you were clever, you'd find a way to adapt this, and you could use it for your knitting needles as well, particularly double points, that sort of thing. Tunisian hooks. It's just a useful, handy-dandy pattern to have, and it looks like it's very well constructed. It was very popular in its time. I did put it on my Proton drive and also on my Google Drive, and I opened the link on the Proton drive and put it in my Reddit group and got like 60 downloads in an hour. It's a really, really fun, useful, and approachable, beginner-friendly pattern. If you are paying attention, you will notice that I still have all the voter protection hotline numbers in a graphic in that section of the show notes under something I really like, because I want you to have those. If you have not voted yet, please consider voting. Just go and get it done with. Yeah, we have a lot of the crazies in my town. My town is very MAGA, and by that I mean the really crazy types. And I have to tell you that it is such a relief to have this over with and to have my notice from the California Secretary of State that my ballot has been successfully counted. So I'm happy about that. Put a lid on it. I need to correct something. That is, when I was in the San Jose airport, I was talking about water drop, and I kept calling it drop water because I just couldn't believe they were calling it water drop. I don't know what came over me. So I got home and I looked it up because some of the flavors look really inviting. And in the airport, they do a lot of greenwashing of this stuff. Like they say, look, we are going to stop you from using plastic bottles to buy disposable drinks, that sort of thing, which is true, and they do, and it's good. I really appreciated that I could use my own bottle on the water drop machine, and the flavors were very interesting. So I thought, well, this is good. I should look it up. And I did, and the website is full of the greenwashing. It's full of, look, we'll give you a starter kit with a glass bottle and all this sort of thing. Everything is so recyclable. Yeah. And it all looks great until you get the product. I ordered it, and it came from Tennessee. It is the most seriously overpackaged thing I have had in a long time. You're buying these little, basically pellets, and they are wrapped in a sealed plastic container, and that is in a small box, and that is in a bigger box. There is nothing about this product that makes me feel like I am saving the world from plastic waste, let me tell you. I'm assuming, and I don't know, that all the cardboard around it can at least be recycled, but there's no getting away from these little pellets are individually packaged. I was so disgusted with that. I was expecting to get a glass bottle with the pellets in it. And yes, that means there's a chance some of the pellets would crumble in the mail. I get toothpaste that way. I use a toothpaste that comes in a glass jar and it's little pellets and you bite on them and chew and brush your teeth with them. And I use those especially to travel. And as a glass jar, and you can refill it from the little paper bags they send you with the pellets. I was expecting water drop to be this, and it isn't. So put a lid on it. I did try the home version of water drop, same company as in the airport. In the airport, sure. I think it's a nice conservationist way to get some nice flavored water that has a few vitamins in it. I wasn't really impressed with the vitamin content, to be honest. I think when you're in a public place like an airport, the good news is you can carry your own empty bottle through TSA and then fill it, which is pretty much what I was doing. But I would not recommend buying their home product because the overpackaging is just amazing. And I really wish they would do this right because they have a good idea and it isn't a bad product. Some of the flavors are just absolutely forgettable. I had one that was called like Spring or something and it's just ridiculous. But they did a lot of fun things. They have an advent calendar, which I think could be a lot of fun. They have all sorts of nifty packaging and ways to buy it. It isn't cheap, though. For every pellet, you're paying roughly $1. And you can buy some of them and get them for under $1. You can buy starter kits and get them for over $1. So water drop, I tried it at home. What I would tell you is, if you're in an airport and you carry your own bottle in, this is a great thing. You find one of their machines, it's ice cold, the flavors are good. But if you're buying the home version, I really wouldn't recommend this. All I can think of is just buy loose leaf herbal tea and make it without all the paper and pollution. Really, these things just aren't vitamin loaded enough to be worth it. On to the blather. Well, it was a week of cool weather. And that, of course, made me say, let's bring on the fall me-mades. You can see a picture of me there. And I'm wearing one of my flannel skirts from last year, the Halloween cats. It's a very cute yellow background with bright orange pumpkins and black kittens, kind of huddling around them. And this, of course, drove me to do all the work on the skirts that I did. So you may remember last week, I cut out 4 skirts. And then I realized I had forgotten about the pockets. I pinned them all together, ready to go, and said, no, there has to be at least a right-hand pocket. So all week long, I kept the pocket and the fabrics out, and I cut out pockets. So that was very nice. And this morning, I got up and I picked up the brown skirt and the dragonfly skirt. And these are full circles, and these are ready to go. These look good. Everything worked out in the cutting. And so I just seamed up the sides with no pocket, and I seamed up the waistband sides. And then I decided to focus on the blue one, on the dragonfly skirt. And so, as I told you before, I made the lovely dragonfly skirt. I have one nice problem. I usually use this roll of sewing elastic, 1/2 inch wide, that I got during the quarantine, and I cut 33-inch strips from it. And the 33-inch strips were working really fine last year. However, now it's very weird. They're a little big for me. So I'm very happy about that. And so I cut the 33-inch strips, put them in the skirts. And yeah, my older skirts and the new skirt today, they're kind of sliding down a little bit. I could take 1 inch off the elastic and be okay. Now, the really nice thing is you can do that. You just pull the elastic through the hole in the inside of the waistband. I don't close up that hole for this reason, because my weight has changed so much over the years. And so you just pull the elastic in, and you can sew it, and you can save the elastic. You don't have to cut it at all. Just sew it the way you need it to fit while leaving a loop, and then just thread the loop back into the waistband so it lies against the elastic that's going around your waist. So at one part, it won't be visible at all, but in one part inside the waistband, you'll have, the thickness that's going around your waist plus the 2 thicknesses of that loop that you've tucked in there. So you can adjust this all you want. I had to do this with my old ones, because my old ones, oh boy, I don't know how long I made those elastics, but easily I took off 5 inches. And I'm always a little nervous about the weight coming back. So I have problems with my 30-year-old skirts sliding down my hips. I do believe this winter I'm going to sit down, pull the elastic out of them, and rethread fresh elastic in a shorter size and just bite that bullet. Because interestingly enough, all my skirts are from the same pattern. It is the same Simplicity pattern from 1996. That's the latest printing of it. And it is in size medium, because you make the skirt with a lot of ease in the waistband. So it's highly adjustable. So it's very, very nice. At any rate, so now it is the fall, and it's not quite cool yet, but I'm knitting socks, and I'm doing the flannel skirts, and I actually wore a flannel skirt and my cardigan one day this week, and it was just so nice. It was a cool day. I'm wearing a black turtleneck as well. Just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So the fall is slowly creeping in here in Southern California. Meanwhile, in other crafts, somebody, and I'm sorry I can't remember your name, listener, gave me all the downloads she had of all my old episodes from the original series and from the current series. I don't know if they're all there, but most of them are. And so I just slammed them onto my 4 terabyte portable hard drive without sorting them or trying to figure them out. Well, anyway, Gigi has been enjoying listening to my podcast, which I have always found rather flattering, because, of course, the Knitmores do a great podcast. themselves. And so I thought, I really should sit down and start sorting these things out. And so I got out a flash drive and I loaded them all onto the flash drive from my 4T drive. And I'm clearing it up on the flash drive. I'm sorting them and arranging them and renumbering them in their proper order. This is not a fast project, but a little bit every day, and I'm cooking along quite nicely on this. So hopefully I will be able to have a collection of all the cognitive that survives. And I am going to then put this back on my 4T drive so I have it. And guess who's going to get that flash drive, Gigi? So you can listen to vintage Dr. Gemma if this is what you really want to do. So I have been calling this the flash drive of Doomy Doom Doom because that's just an old joke. I can't remember where that even comes from, but whenever you work intensively on a project and you feel a little weird about it. So anyway, I'm working on the flash drive. In the meantime, I've talked about most of my stuff, so let me go through the normal notes and such. In the meantime, I'm just going to move on because I've spent most of this episode doing blather. So I'm going to move on to the community resources, and you can find in the show notes the link to the books I've used, the library of books that I've used as I've been working on various projects, and also my favorite resources that I buy to support my knitting that I've mentioned, and also my links for skills and techniques that I like. You can see my link tree. There is an image of it. It is not clickable, but there is a link to my link tree where you can pick up the links for anything. My races, various charities, that sort of thing. You can also find links for our sponsors for CFR10, including the wonderful Nanette Wake, whose yarn I'm using to make my Yule socks right now. Beautiful Yarns on Etsy. I don't know if that's still alive. I'll have to go check that. But Rachel Roth, Wishful Knitting, and of course Laser Sheep, Oink, and Lisa Souza, our vendors. They are also linked up in the community resources links as well, under my favorite resources to buy. So you can find all those up there. Then you can find the calendar that's local to me here in the Santa Clarita Valley. I'm not actually in the SCV. I'm a little bit north of it, but that's where I hang. And those are all groups that have links on Facebook. So you have to go find them on Facebook. In the meantime, there's my calendar, which is getting very interesting these days. I keep adding things, which makes me happy. Mostly I'm adding races because we want the beloved son to continue to run. We don't want him to give it up because his track team has ended for the season and he's now aged out of it. So he will be running in costume with me the Monster Dash on Saturday morning. By the time you hear this, we should be finished it. After that, of course, we have the Santa Clarita Marathons 5K on November 10th. On November 28th to the 1st, I will be off for Thanksgiving and I will probably be doing some candle making, or at least the prepping for the Romule candle pour, which I'm quite looking forward to. I have a turkey trot on November 28th, and that will be right where my son was running yesterday at Central Park in Santa Clarita. Romule is coming up December 21st and onward, and on December 21st I have a jingle jog up in Loretta 1031's neck of the neighborhood up in Marie Kerr Park. And then, yes, I actually have a Cupid Dash in February. I have not found anything in January to run, alas, alack. And the Mardi Gras Madness is a week later after the Cupid Dash. On February 23rd, I am signed up now for another course on the same route that I'll be running this weekend. And this one, the new one, is the Rockin' Shamrock on March 16th. And the Sugar Daddy 5K on June 14th, which leads me up to the date for CFR 11 on October 11th, 2025. And I have not yet started the thread for it. I will put that link in the show notes when I do. Minerva gets the last word. Well, someone has been so happy to have me home on the weekend. One of the weird things about house pets, I learned this with my first dog, the redoubtable Click, an amazing Norwegian elkhound. As weird as it sounds, many pets are perfectly capable of memorizing your daily schedule. Minerva has taken to that. So usually at 50 minutes after the hour or 45 minutes after the hour, if my door is open and nobody's home but me and her, Minerva will come in and jump in my lap. And that is her signal. I'm supposed to get up and go to the restroom because I do that between every patient to make sure I don't get any kind of nasty infections. So Minerva now likes to come in and jump on my lap when it's time for me to get up. And I didn't realize it, but she understands the weekends. She understands that there's this 2-day stretch where I'm not talking to my computer. And so she's liking the weekends, and she has been rather traumatized by this last series of weekends. Even this past weekend, not the one I'm coming off of, but last week, a week ago. She was traumatized when I had a weekend home from San Jose and CFR and the races and all that. But I was kind of hanging out and the boys went away, and it upset her that it was just me and her. She likes everybody to be at home. She's a very social sort of person. So this weekend, I have had Minerva with me all the time, and she keeps getting on the bed in the middle of the night and waking me up, ramming her face into mine, and cuddling up against me and purring and asking me to cuddle her and pet her. Now, she overheats on the bed. She can't take it for very long, so I only get about 3 minutes of this, but she wants this. She's polite. She waits until I wake up. So if I show any sign of consciousness, I get bopped by her nose. She'll bash me in the face with her nose. And, you know, I've learned to really enjoy this. So I think Minerva's last word would be, I got your schedule down, and I'm right here at home waiting for you. And there is a picture of her looking soulfully at me over the bottom bed rail at the foot of the bed. Also, while she was doing that, I started snapping her picture. And for some reason, she felt motivated to recreate the painting of the creation that's on the very dome of the Sistine Chapel. So you can see Minerva and I recreating Michelangelo there as well. But really her last word is, hey, I'm right here, I'm at home, I love you, and I'm waiting for you. Having said that, I'm at home, and I'm having a lovely, lovely weekend. I hate to see it end, but I feel just real relaxed and happy, and I will be talking to our own Quantum Quadrat in about an hour. So on that happy note, I'm going to say, remember, we are a community. When we take care of the community, when we feed and house and protect and humanely treat all our sisters and our brothers and our others, we are guaranteeing our own individual rights. Think about it. So on that note, please everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.